This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Hello. Hi there. I guess we are on already. Good morning, truth seekers and everybody interested in the Zodiac case. I am bringing us back to Black Dahlia, which is where we left off last week. I thought it was interesting to note some I'm going to call them coincidences for lack of a better word at this point, but some of the information that has been determined thus far, I wanted to take a step back and see how that tied in. So to where we left off before, these are images that were found on a roll of 110 film in Jack Terrence's belongings in that green military box that we talked about earlier on in this presentation. The idea behind this was that we believe Jack had taken a picture of what might have been the torture of Black Dahlia. And at some point in time, he had then taken a picture of that with a roll of 110 film and never developed that roll of 110 film. So that stayed in its negative state inside of the box until Dennis Kaufman found that particular roll of film and had it developed. When we could tell that it was a picture of a picture based on the black borders around the outside, which would indicate that that particular photo was originally taken early in maybe even the 1940s. So what we see up here to the top left-hand corner was the original negative and what it produced as far as a picture was concerned. It was handed over to an individual that then actually attempted to add some hues or colors to it. And we can see the one to the right at the top there. Looks like there's actually an image coming to life. It looks like eyes, a nose. It looks like a mouth that has been cut open, just like we see in the Black Dahlia's case. And as we continue with the bottom two, we can see different hues he's applied to this actual negative, including a fuchsia hue that actually helped bring out those eyes a little bit more. The reason why I stepped back, though, is because the reference that we see in the top hand corner here, Black Dahlia's macabre murder, is an imitation of Man Ray's art, which furthers the media style reference found throughout these crimes. So there's always a newspaper, book, movie, art, something that is revolving around media in these cases. So the reason why I stepped back and brought that up is because Man Ray's art is, which we'll look at one of the pieces that is a mimicry of the Black Dahlia murder. I actually want to question whether or not Man Ray's art is a mimic or an imitation of the Black Dahlia murder or vice versa. The Black Dahlia was the inspiration for Man Ray's art. So we're going to look at George Hodel and his relation to this particular case. So Steve Hodel has written a couple books in regards to his father being the murderer of Black Dahlia. We do show through some of these cipher solves from Harriet Suchet that there's an indication that Mr. Hodel was in fact involved with something to do with the lipstick killings and with the Black Dahlia. We also know that there are other document examiners out there, including the one hired by Steve Hodel for his book, that indicated the handwriting from the lipstick killer, the Black Dahlia murderer, and the Zodiac killings were all from one author, which is exactly what I believe. So we know that there are other document examiners out there finding the same consistency. Now, I just want to caution people as far as George Hodel is concerned, because this individual would have then been something like, he was born 1907. So by 69, he's 62 years old, a little bit out of the age parameter for the Zodiac. And we can see his picture here. He looks absolutely nothing like the Zodiac. So if he can't be the Zodiac and he may have been involved with lipstick and Black Dahlia, we might find this involvement to be true, but we know that he is not the actual writer of these letters. And that's simply because they've been identified as coming from the same author as the Zodiac killer. So it turns out that George Hodel is actually a friend based on Steve Hodel's book with Man Ray, which is a surrealist, and and he believes that his father committed those grisly murders as an emulation of the artist's technique. But let me walk you through some affiliation with all of this, and we'll take you back to the lipstick message, in which case it says to President Truman, "Letha see self, see myself on a ladder at the North Edgewater window fitting. Dive in entrance, kill youth inside of door. Hilliard photo shoot of Dr. G. Hodel with Man Ray dissection into torso, arms, legs. So CIA sent phony William Hirons, i.e. he's to cry alone a lot in prison, Jack." So she is basically saying to me again that he says in the cryptic note to Mayor Kelly that he kidnapped and killed Degnan, that his to-be wife, Letha, witnessed it. It is a message for President Truman, and it goes on to say that Hilliard did the photo shoot of Hodel and Man Ray dissection. But the shocker is that William Hirons is not a genuine guy, a phony sent by the CIA, and is to go to prison for this crime. This was the era of communist and Cold War beginnings, un-American activities, and Hirons may have been an enemy within USA borders. My solve, that I hope to send an even better cleaned up version, she says, has a disclaimer due to not being able to see the actual note. That said, Jack brings up CIA, so maybe this is a reason why there's no FOIA file on this particular crime. It's a very typical Terrence style of filling in proper names and unabbreviating that she's seen him do in some of the cryptic messages, especially in the Zodiac and D.B. Cooper errors. Then the anagram to get a viable message. And so we see this message that talks about Hilliard, Hodel, and Man Ray. So I thought we'd do some background research on these individuals and see how they play into this stuff. So basically, here is some of Man Ray's art. To the right, we actually see something, I believe, out of Hodel's book, in which case we see this eerie partial bodies, naked, splaying about or laid about. And to the left, we can actually see it says Duchamp Etant Donis. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly or not, but it states that he began this particular work in 1947, which is why I ask, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Was the Black Dahlia killed first? Or was this particular print actually in the makings before Black Dahlia was killed? And we know that she was killed early in January of 1947, so it wouldn't have given him much time to start on it ahead of time, but it's possible. So anyways, he said he worked on it for 20 years in secret and first shown to his close friend William Copley and made public only after his death compared to Elizabeth's short crime scene. So basically, nobody purportedly ever saw this until 20 years or until after his death. So both show knife cuts to the victim's private parts. Again, something that how could he have known, or why would he have displayed this particular type of imagery or art without some type of inspiration, I guess, if you will. So was the Man Ray the inspiration behind the Black Dahlia murder, or was the Black Dahlia murder the inspiration behind Man Ray's art? That is the question. So let's take a look at Man Ray. Man Ray's career is distinctive above all for the success he achieved in both the United States and Europe. First maturing in the center of American modernism in the 1910s, he made Paris his home in the 1920s and 1930s. And in the 1940s, this is where it gets interesting. He crossed back across the Atlantic once again because of the war, spending periods in New York and Hollywood. So in the 1940s, he is absolutely here, and it makes it plausible, obviously, if he's in the Hollywood area, that he could have come into contact with this stuff. It says his art spanned painting, sculpture, film, prints, and poetry, and in his long career, he worked in styles influenced by Cubism, Futurism, Dada, and Surrealism. He also successfully navigated the worlds of commercial and fine art and came to be a sought-after fashion photographer. He is perhaps most remembered for his photographs of the interwar years, in particular the cameraless pictures he called rayographs, but he always regarded himself first and foremost as a painter. And he actually got his start from his really good friend Copley. So when we see back here in the actual picture, we see where it says William Copley. We're going to get into that too. But that's how he found his way into art. So Man Ray's birth name was Emanuel Radnitsky. He was born in South Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He was the eldest child of a Russian Jewish immigrant. That's going to become a theme as we start to move through through this presentation. So basically, he said he had a brother, Sam, and two sisters. He was the youngest, born in 1987. Let's see. The Radnitsky family changed their surname to Ray, which is one of the things that I had presumed. A lot of people from Jewish descent had changed their last name to something more American, something more modern, in order to get rid of that stigmatism of being Jewish. Man Ray's brother chose the surname in reaction to the ethnic discrimination and the anti-Semitism, which is what I just discussed. And Emmanuel, who was called Manny as a nickname, changed his first name to Man and gradually began to use Man Ray as his name. So we see a complete name change here for this individual. The Second World War forced Man Ray to return from Paris to the United States, and he lived in Los Angeles from 1940 to 1951. So he is right where he needs to be for these particular murders, as indicated by Harriet Suchet and her solve. He focused his creative energy on painting. A few days after arriving in Los Angeles, Man Ray met Juliet Browner, a first-generation American of Romanian Jewish lineage. In 1948, Man Ray had a solo exhibition at the Copley Galleries. So Copley was the one that was involved with art and gave him his break, basically, in Beverly Hills, which brought together a wide array of work and featured his newly painted canvases of the Shakespearean Equations series. And we can see this nifty little half-naked person over here, well, fully naked person, even so much as they put a black stocking on one of the legs to make it appear as though the leg was missing at above the knee. And then, of course, we see this little paper cutout top over the face of the actual model for this. So early in life, let's see. So his introduction to art actually came through William Copley, his good friend, as you had saw, the only person who purportedly saw this particular work on the Black Dahlia previous to it ever being released after Man Ray died. But William Copley was born in New York City in 1919 and was adopted in 1921 by Ira C. Copley, the owner of 16 newspaper companies in Chicago and San Diego. And he was also a utility tycoon. So we're back into the General Electric style stuff and the power plants and the utility companies. And of course, here we see Chicago newspapers and San Diego newspapers. In fact, the Herald, I think one of them is called, we'll get into. So we're seeing this connection to newspaper companies and the utility companies. So I wasn't really shocked to find out that Copley comes from this background. Ira C. Copley remarried after the death of his wife, Edith, several years after the adoption took place. So Ira C. Copley actually adopted William Copley. They lived in Aurora, Illinois until Copley was 10 years old, whereby the family moved to Coronado Island, California. I've been to Coronado Island, very beautiful place. Copley was sent to Phillips Andover and then to Yale University by his adopted parents. He was drafted in the Second World War in the middle of his education at Yale, a decision that was negotiated by the school and the Army. So who knows what was negotiated, and maybe he didn't even actually have to go, but there was something decided. Copley experimented with politics upon returning home from the war, working as a reporter for his father's newspaper. So here may very well be that reporting. We see that the Black Dahlia and the Zodiac and many of the crimes, they're actually writing to the editor, consistently to the editor of a newspaper. Of course, we know that Hearst was the actual mega paper guy, I guess if you'd call him. Nobody actually ran a paper in the United States without some type of assistance from Hearst, and he either made you or could break you. By 1946, Copley met and married Marjorie Doris Weed, the daughter of a test pilot for the Navy. Doris's sister was married to John Ployart, a Canadian-born animator and narrator at Walt Disney Studios. I thought that was even interesting. Copley and Ployart soon became friends, and Ployart began introducing Copley to painting and surrealism. So this is where Man Ray's this is where Copley enters into painting and surrealism and then teaches that to Man Ray. So the two traveled to Mexico and New York, discovering art, meeting the artists behind the works, and grasping surrealist ideas. It was during this time that Copley and Ployart decided to open a gallery in Los Angeles to exhibit surrealist works, which included Man Ray. So this brings me back to Jack has the inside to some Chicago newspaper comics. We don't know how, but it's true that he does. And there's always this Disney or Alice in Wonderland theme of the white rabbits in time that is consistently following the path of these particular crimes. And we could certainly go down a hole with these cases, which I kind of did in this research just to kind of see who these players were that Harriet Suchet was talking about. So now we know where Man Ray was developed under William Copley, whose father owned several newspaper companies, including in Chicago and in San Diego. So that brings us to Williamilliard. He was actually the first African-American editor in 1971. He was given the city editor position of the Oregonian newspaper. And if you don't, because we haven't gotten to the D.B. Cooper yet, we're going to find that the Oregonian newspaper is one of the newspapers that are called out in the D.B. Cooper case. So is that a coincidence? I'm not exactly sure. However, we do see that the Oregonian newspaper will play into this presentation at a later date. So basically his background is that he was born in 1928, the same year as Jack, and he was also in the U.S. Navy, just as Jack was. He was born in Portland, Oregon. He became the first Black reporter at the Oregonian newspaper and later its editor in a pioneering 42-year career, and died at the age of 89. So let's see, he was once denied a paper route at the Oregonian because managers said whites did not want blacks delivering their paper. But after serving in the U.S. Navy and graduating from college, he was hired as a copy boy at age 25. So this would literally put him about 7 years past the point in time of these murders and giving him the opportunity up to that point to have been part of this. So through talent and hard work, he made his way up from there, becoming executive editor in 1982. I think more or less the rest of this is just some information in regards to him, like he basically how he came to be the assistant city editor in 1965 and then the city editor in 1982. Let's see, closed journal staff, an assistant city editor when Hilliard ran the operation. We had a good focus discussions on where the paper should go, then bam, it was over. He really didn't get to make his mark. Events overtook the paper and him. So one of the challenges he faced in 1992, the paper was scooped on the story that 10 women had accused Senator Bob Packwood of sexual harassment. The Oregonian came in for even more criticism when it was revealed one of its own reporters had been kissed on the lips by Packwood, and none of them reported this. And Hilliard's response to this, I'm sure, was just to cover the senator's back, but I was in the dark about all of that. And you get to hear that a lot by people that are high up in there's on the StreamYard. That's why your intro cut. So basically he was covering, obviously, and not reporting on this Packwood incident, and then just claimed to be in the dark about it. So he claimed that some lower level editors in the newspaper operation knew about it and knew the Washington Post was out here looking into allegations, but the editors did nothing about it. They didn't pass the word on to me or the publisher. So yeah, that would be like the president saying, I don't know, I don't know these things. You know, they keep them out of the dark on purpose. But whatever the reason was, they were very much aware of the sexual harassment was going on, and the Oregonian did nothing to actually report on it. So that brings us back into some information. Really, I had looked at the pictures in Jack's possession. It appeared that the individual, Black Dahlia, appeared to be in shock, and that the pictures showed a beating about the head and face. This is corroborated by the newspapers found in the FBI FOIA files, which really actually indicated that Miss Short, let's see if I can figure out where announced Miss Short died of hemorrhage and shock. So I actually looked at those pictures in Jack's belongings, and it looks to me as though the individual is still alive and in shock. And that's because the eyes are actually focused up and outward rather than drooping down as if she had lost motor control due to death. And when I showed this, actually, like I said, to the FBI, they indicated they didn't see what I saw, but we're going to get into some more of those pictures here shortly. Here's those pictures. So basically, did I even finish my I think I finished it on. Okay, so yes, we did finish that on Hilliard, on George Hodel, and on Man Ray. Now, the possibility of all of them being involved, we see that it is clear that their proximity is definitely within the area of what is going on with this. However, I do not believe that they are the ones that did the abduction and the killing. Regardless of what they did in the end to kind of stage this particular scene on Black Dahlia, it's very obvious that more than one person had their hands on what was going on with Black Dahlia. So these pictures again have been revisited, and now these ones are a little bit bigger. I have it in black and white. I have one in an attempt to place some type of a color in the background. And what we do see is that it looks like two streaks that are running from Black Dahlia's nose, which is consistent if you look in the autopsy photos with where there's damage to her nose. So you can actually see the sores, and those would have been what was bleeding in my eyes in this particular picture. We can also see up at the top here, we can see that her one eye is looking up to the left here. This eye is looking straight up, which indicates that this individual is in shock. I mean, clearly they're not focused. They're not paying attention to what's going on, but those muscles are still working at this point because those eyes are actually still lifted upward. The belt that we see across the forehead, it looks or appears to be a belt. I'm not exactly sure what, I mean, that would be the closest, or some type of chain, something that is actually holding her head back while she is being tortured. We can actually see in the autopsy photo, again, some of the damage to her forehead. Now, I'm not exactly sure if that was due to the beating or the actual pin down that was occurring while she was being tortured. Either way, it looks to me like this is definitely a picture where we can actually see the cut lines all the way across the mouth, all the way back to the ear. We can see how that is in the autopsy photos itself. And we can also kind of see some of the jagged areas of the actual particular cut, which is looking fairly consistent with what we're seeing up here in this picture. I remind everybody that we turned these negatives over to the LAPD. My board says that we did that on August 12th of 2010 to Mitzi Roberts. She was the cold case detective for the Los Angeles Police Department. I spoke with her and her captain at the time. I gave them a handwriting presentation. And of course, they sat there in awe over the entire presentation. I thought we did a great job at presenting what we had. We gave them the negatives that were on the 110 film, and Dennis and I returned home. At some point after that, Dennis received a call from Mitzi Roberts, asked to meet him in Sacramento at a hotel. She flew in, she returned some negatives to him and indicated she was told not to look into this case, that she was told to actually leave this case alone. So she returned the negatives to Dennis. However, she failed to return this very negative itself. And this one happened to be one that was cut out of the actual strip. So it was a singular negative, and it had a partner to it. So there was another single one, but both of those single negatives were not returned. That brings us into our first communication in regards to the Black Dahlia, and it occurs on it just says January 1947. I find this one interesting because, like we'll see in some of the Zodiac stuff and some of the other crimes, the killer likes to tout himself as being something special, and he likes people to know who he is. So here we get a description. And it's actually written to Dear Mr. Hoover. So we're still trying to figure out, is Jack reporting to Hoover, or is Jack having a pissing contest with Hoover because he's in the FBI and Jack's in the CIA? I really don't know yet. Is Jack actually being ran by the mob, contract security? Because we'll see that in Jack's future. I'm not sure. Either way, to Dear Mr. Hoover, I have a suggestion. And of course, the person or the individual spells Los Angeles, California, just as the Black Dahlia killer or author does, and just like Jack does. It's Angles instead of Angeles. So is this also the killer himself writing his own note to Mr. Hoover? I still need to do some handwriting examinations on this particular document in comparison to Jack's cursive writing to see if it's consistent. But he has a suggestion: Los Angeles, California, for the Black Dahlia, Elizabeth Short. Black Dahlia Elizabeth Short is again written in all capital letters with kind of a block writing, which we've seen in some of the cases. It says that he's an ex-Marine, that his race is white, he's aged 28 to 30, the hair is red, and he's handsome. Weighed about 160 pounds, Irish and English, 5'10" tall. Check all camps in California and hospitals. So within 2 weeks, the murder be caught. I hope you'll find this helps the police. Signed off G48 with a signature that's been redacted in the FOIA files. I did look up what a G48 is, and I found that through the research shows that this is a broadcast receiver used in World War II. This is right up Jack's alley as we see him obtain his personal ham radio license from 1955 to 1970, from novice to technician by 1956. Jack was also a technical supply sergeant while in the Air Force during 1948 and 1953. So he's very familiar with these types of devices that are used. So that's the only thing I could find relating to a G48. So aside from spelling it like Jack, it appears as though the ham radio is also fitting in with Jack. And also that being something that is done in the military. So we have that military connection again. So on January 19th, 1947 was the handwritten letter to Hoover. I do not know the origin of this letter, but I see that the FBI entertained it, so I'm going to. So Hoover, equaling that link where Black Dahlia was said to be related to Hoover, i.e. the stalking killer, the dump site locations, or as head of the FBI being reported to per Harriet Suchet. So we really are not sure what role, but Hoover seems to be at the top of this killer's list. Hoover is also pro-FBI, and there is an infighting between agencies because the FBI is receiving more funding. The theme here is embarrass the FBI through committing crimes they cannot solve, or is Jack truly an avenger? We are not sure. Block letter writing as seen in other cases. We see that the race is white, the hair is red, he's handsome, about 160 in weight, 5'10". Check the camps and hospitals in California. All of this could be related to Jack. As far as the ex-Marine, age 28 to 30, Irish and English, that would be the wrong military for Jack, the wrong age, and not sure of Jack's cultural background at this point, but I just started this research, so I will figure that out and let you guys know. Looking in camps and hospital, this author actually taunts with a description and promise of capture. That's something that I see being done in the Oakland County child murders, in the Zodiac cases, in the lipstick case where they offer to turn themselves in. So the taunts with the description and promise of capture also equals Bowerdorf, Zodiac, Deer Draft Board, D.B. Cooper, Oakland County child murderer. So we have a lot of cross connections with other cases. And then it says within 2 weeks, murder, spelled incorrectly because that should have said murderer, would be caught. I noted that because in Georgette Bowerdorf's anniversary letter, the killer made a mistake in referencing the word murderer or murder and being spelled as murderer, and then having to X out the ER by typing an X over those letters. So consistently having an issue with using murder or murderer in the right tense. I hope that these help the police. We have many references to help or a false sense of assistance throughout these crimes from the actual author. The sign off we just discussed is G48 and a redacted signature from radiomuseum.org is a model G48 Queen Radio World War II tuner. So first mention of a military camp or hospital. Hospital is brought up in many of these communications to come. They're always trying to make you believe that he's either in prison or in a hospital or dead. And that's why we're not hearing from him anymore. And in some cases that would be true, but in other cases, he was just merely in another state, I believe, causing havoc and killing people. And then once he returns back to California, we get our taste of him once again. On January 21st, 1947, the LAPD receives it went to the Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers as it indicated, but here is Dahlia's belongings. It's a cutout postcard mailed to Los Angeles Examiner and other LA newspapers. So here's the Dahlia's belongings letter to follow. The front of the cutout postcard is a 2-line addressing sequence seen in many of the Zodiac envelopes. It contains 2 stamps, which is very consistent with Zodiac and D.B. Cooper. Letter to follow is also consistent with the crimes with the taunt of more. The belongings is the proof he is the killer, just like the Zodiac sent in a piece of Paul Stein's shirt so that he would be taken seriously. So obviously, if the individual is in possession of Black Dahlia's belongings, he at a minimum was at the crime. Whether or not he committed the crime is still yet to be seen. Is Jack just a messenger boy for this particular syndicate or underground operation, or is he actually killing people? I tend to believe he's actually killing people. There are some that he does, and it makes me wonder if he then wasn't just brought into complete communications so that if they were examined, that handwriting wouldn't match other forensics that were found in the crime. So again, we're going to talk about that later in some of the other crimes where we know that there's some forensic evidence in it. So the cutouts are also equal to the Zodiac, I-45, Dahlias, D.B. Cooper, and the I-45 Tim Miller cases. Some of the dates of the following communications in the Black Dahlia Elizabeth Short case may or may not be dated precisely, as much of what I have researched is old, retold, and some disinformation. So don't hold me accountable if some are not correct. I tried to be as precise as possible as I go through this. Now we see our next murder after Black Dahlia on January 22nd, 1947, Marianne Newton, 36, of San Diego. The only information I have on this individual was that they were strangled and bludgeoned after leaving a popular nightclub late with unknown dark-haired man. Found nude along a dirt road, which is consistent with what we saw with Black Dahlia. So do we have somebody who's quickly jumping on board to be a copycat, or are we dealing with the same murderer? I would tend to believe that somebody wouldn't jump on as quickly as we see here to be a copycat, because then they could actually accidentally end up taking the rap for the Black Dahlia. So I'm tending to believe that this is actually the same killer. We have a few more messages and notes that came in on January 23rd of 1947. There was a phone call to the authorities to expect Short's personal effects and letters to follow, which is consistent with Susan Degnan, Texarkana Phantom, Black Dahlia, the Zodiac. The lipstick killer called the police to tell them where they had placed her body parts. So we see that there is this this theme of calling the police department to let them know what they've done. On January 24th, 1947, a postcard is sent in that says, "I will give up in Dahlia killing if I get 10 years. Don't try to find me." So if I get 10 years, he's wanting his own terms. We saw that done in the Oakland County child killer case. Don't try to find me equals catch me if you can in the lipstick killer case. And the underlying words, like the letter to Hoover, is a theme as well. The cutouts we've talked about are in Zodiac, D.B. Cooper, Dahlias, Tim Miller, I-45. On January 26th of 1947, Have Changed My Mind is another postcard that comes in, received by the police department. And it says, "Have changed my mind. You would not give me a square deal. Dahlia killing was justified." So once again, justified. Justified for who? I mean, is this a mob reference? Because at first it said it was divine retribution for Bauerdorf, and now it's justified for Dahlia. So you would not give me a square deal is an excuse to just keep on going. Justified is where we saw in Georgette Bauerdorf, strong feeling that Bauerdorf and Short may have been the target of these crime sprees, but all others were thrown in to take off suspicion of what was really going on. Bauerdorf is a rich oil heiress whose father must have been really big, just like Degnan was the target in lipstick killings. Justified equals Bauerdorf's divine retribution. So D.B. Cooper, and if Short was speaking out about the impending death of Bugsy Siegel, this would have been the classic mob retaliation and punishment. I do know that D.B. Cooper also speaks about a revolution. Black Dahlia speaks about the Avenger. So we're seeing a lot of these it needed to happen type statements, or there was a reason why it happened, and that justifies the murder of these individuals. On January 26, 1947, we got the Turning In postcard to the Herald Express. So now remember, the Herald is also a newspaper owned by the Copleys in San Diego, as well as Hearst owns the Los Angeles Herald Express. So the lipstick killer, this one says, here it is, turning in Wednesday, January 29th at 10 a.m. Had my fun at police, Black Dahlia Avenger. So he's indicating that he's going to turn himself in on Wednesday, January 29th at 10 a.m. after he's done having his fun with the police. The lipstick killer agreed to turn himself into a tavern. Georgette Bowerdorf's murder, it indicated they'd turn themselves into the Hollywood Canteen. The Zodiac, after his next list of victims, was going to turn himself in, and so much more. So here it is. Postcard claims to have had fun with the police, which equals the Zodiac, Scorpion, and the finale letters. There's a lot of fun references, barrels of fun, all kinds of stuff that we'll see in the sick little mind of our author here. The date construction, January 24th, 10 a.m., is consistent with Lake Berryessa's door on the Carmagia in the Zodiac case, whereby the time is placed on the same line as the date. So we see another consistency in the way the date and the time is spelled out by this individual. The Avenger, obviously equaling justified in Bowerdorf and divine retribution. So the addressing sequences closely resemble the Zodiac's. It's inconsistent addressing of mail, where usually the address is incomplete, but the mail always makes it to where it needs to go. Date and time identifying the crime can be found on the car door the Zodiac wrote on Lake Berryessa, and the reference to having had fun with the police is almost a direct quote used by the Zodiac that we will see often. And Jack said the 340 cipher was unsolvable because he was just having fun and giving the police some busy work. So fun is another good theme. This is actually the anagram solved from the Here It Is Turning In Wednesday message by Harriet Suchet. Let's see if we can tell what she says here. So it says, she's seen Tennessee Canine Vet and Nixon and Will Wilkerson, Las Vegas, hire 10 New Orleans goons, bugs to get it next. So let's talk about that a little bit. Will Wilkerson is also a newspaper owner, I'm told by Harriet, in the Los Angeles area. However, he lives in another location, and it was believed that Black Dahlia or Elizabeth Short was filling Will Wilkerson in on what was going on. However, this message indicates that Will Wilkerson is involved in what's going on. So I'm not sure why she would need to portray that information to him, or if she was getting that information possibly from him and spreading it to other people, which is why she was killed and why her mouth was cut wide open as it be. So next is a theme that we will see running its course through the messages of the killer, and it looks as though we are once again seeing the premeditation of a crime as described by the FBI. So this letter coming in January of 1947, and I believe that Bugsy Siegel is killed somewhere in June or July of 47. It'll be coming up here soon. I don't have any evidence that supports Jack's involvement in the assassination of Bugsy Siegel, but he seems to be the tell-all messenger for some organization because he also gets involved in the JFK case with a letter to the Dallas police. So he seems to be some type of a messenger, and I'm just not sure for who. It appears that he's telling someone why Elizabeth Short had to die. By this solve, she was on her way to talk about what she knew, and this resulted in her mouth being cut from ear to ear. On January 28th of 1947, we get the Go Slow postcard to the Herald Express. Again, it's cutouts except for the actual handwritten address. The back of the postcard actually says, "Go slow, man killer says." And this is kind of a journalistic approach. Kind of made me think that the individual knows a lot about editing, about newspapers. The lipstick and the Zodiac and the OCCK talk about this or talk in this manner. The date is cut out. We've seen that in the Zodiac postcard to Mr. Adams. The man killer, D.B. Cooper, Playboy cutouts, career killer is discovered within that. Front of postcard indicates Herald Express, Crime Department, Los Angeles. So we again have mailing without proper postage. The only person or the only individuals I know that could mail something for free was the government. So, and that was really early on. I'm not sure at what time it became important for government entities to begin using postage, but anybody who was involved with the government, at least in the 1800s, were allowed to mail anything they wanted just by placing free up in the right-hand corner. The date postcard with cutouts and handwritten envelope in the Black Dahlia is consistent. Tuesday, January 28th, 1947 is cut from the newspaper itself. Go slow is kind of, we get this back and forth from this author. So in the lipstick, he said, hurry up. And in Black Dahlia, he says, go slow. So I kind of still find those to be cross-connecting messages, because he is constantly saying either catch up or slow down. Man killer says, alluding to killing a man, which at that point, he hadn't killed any men. So I'm not exactly sure where that is coming from or what that's alluding to, unless he's calling himself the man and the killer at the same time. I kind of read this as he's been killing men, and I'm not sure who those men are just yet in the Black Dahlia case. On January 28th, 1947, we have the yes or no postcard to the Los Angeles Herald and Express with handwritten address and cutouts on the postcard. So the back of the postcard indicated yes or no with a question mark, as if he is waiting for an answer to turning himself in. So I'm not sure what he's yesing or knowing about at this point. But we also find highlighted by a red circle. Oh boy. Sorry about that. By a red circle up here, we see this one letter L that is cut out. I bring this to your attention because we're going to find throughout many of the communications, including the Zodiac, that we have this random dropped L in communications off to the side. They're not part of anything. They don't mean anything. I'm not sure. Well, I'm sure they mean something. I just have not been able to figure out what that is. But that L is very significant in these communications, because we're going to continue to see it randomly placed in communications throughout. The front of the postcard is sent to Los Angeles Herald and Express, once again at 1243 Trenton. Trenton actually becomes a theme for the Zodiac and the Anthrax letters. So Trenton, New Jersey. It is coincidental that this Los Angeles Herald and Express happens to reside on Trenton. Does that mean that Hearst is the one in charge of everything that's going on here? Are they creating sensational news so that they can sell newspapers after the war had ended and everybody is looking for a new way to make money? This seems to be a huge way to be able to sell newspapers. And because we see it hopping from one major location to the next, it's almost like the NFL. Where are we going to play the Super Bowl this year? Who gets the money from this particular event? So typical Zodiac and Jack move to misspell something they spell correctly on another line of the same communication. So we see Los Angeles is misspelled in the bottom of the actual address, but in the top at the Los Angeles Herald and Express, it's spelled correctly. We see that happening in the Zodiac stuff a lot. Again, 2 stamps, Zodiac either over postage or under postage is some of the themes with the moving of the mail. The Black Dahlia Adventures spelled Los Angeles, again, just like the description letter written to the FBI Hoover on 1/19/1947, and just like Jack spells it. On January 29th, 1947, Ask Newsman postcard to the Herald Express. So while he could spell Herald every other time, all of a sudden he cannot spell Herald. I actually tend to believe that this is just done on purpose to kind of dumb things down. He certainly knows how to spell Herald, and this is what I would refer to as a letter E spelling error. And that's where he either adds an E where it doesn't belong, or he places the E in the wrong place. In this case, he actually places the A in the wrong place. But again, just the similarities in the ability to spell it correctly one time, and then the next we see it's incorrectly spelled. So the postcard addressed to the Herald Express says, "Ask Newsman at 5 and Hill for clue. Why not let that nut go? I spoke to said man." And it's BDA, Black Dahlia Adventure, at the bottom, and it's mailed to the Herald Express. Though there's no address, I'm sure everybody knew where the Herald Express was. So Herald spelled incorrectly, even though the killer has spelled it right many times. The and symbol is used in another letter. The line 4 through 9 talks about the news guy at 5 p.m. All letters related share some connection to media events in the news. This killer definitely follows the news. The clue is another theme we're going to see throughout these. whether the clue was figured out or the clue was not. He tells you one way or another each time. The Zodiac needed to be recognized for his deeds, but he did not wish to receive unwanted attention for crimes he did not do. And at the same time, he would let the media or police know that they were wrong if any other suspect was receiving attention for his deeds. So this is another cross connection to the Zodiac stuff, where he is actually saying that's not the right guy. And let that, it says F, but it looks like it was probably a block A. Was crossed out, nut go, I spoke. So the Zodiac cipher 340 was solved by Lawrence Swearingham, where he called himself an old nut dog. I found that to be rather interesting, since we know that the word nut is used in many of these particular communications, including one to Gall and Sharp, who were former Scientologists and Manson family members that were killed in New York and dumped in Los Angeles, where they called him an old nut. So we're going to see that theme many times. So the block writing A, which can be found in Lipstick Killers, Zodiac, Sherry Joe Bates, and D.B. Cooper, we'll visit that here shortly. And actually, when I blew this postcard up, I found the origin of the postcard was the Earl Carroll Theater Restaurant on Sunset Boulevard in Vine, with 60 of the most beautiful girls in the world, it says. I did some research on that to kind of feel, oh, where'd you go? Huh. Okay. It must be out of play there. Okay. So we will talk about the Earl Carroll Theater Restaurant here in a minute if we have time. We also have an additional postcard to the Herald Express, building 1243, Trenton. Now, Trenton is completely spelled out correctly. Building 1243, we see building is completely spelled out in the Anthrax mailings, and I believe there's a couple others that they actually use the full word building, and it's broken into two, so it's BUIL with a space and then the DING, which is that inconsistent spacing, making a single word appear as two that we noted for the Zodiac and Jack. Trenton Street again, we have Bruce Ivins' letter in 2006 in the Scorpion, New Jersey, and Anthrax. Zone is, or 15, Los Angeles. So the individual has postal knowledge. California, the circle I dot on California is seen in Zodiac, Jax, and many other letters. Or I was back and forth. I believe that this was a twisted version of Caliph, being it came under Los Angeles, but Harriet had also thought that it said Gaipe, Gaipe, which I could kind of see how somebody could see or get that out of it. So I looked at that, and that's the Irish record means he bursts into laughter. So again, with that whole fun and have fun type philosophy, that still kind of fits in, even if that is what that says. So maybe the Hoover letter was telling some truth about being Irish and white. This is the solve to the Ask the Man, to Herald Express, Ask the Man. It says 25 on the 25th, 5 New Orleans landscape gangsters are to kill B. Siegel next at Onis. I'm not sure what Onis is. I did try to look something up that indicated what it was, but again, this was one of the solves from Harriet Suchet. The date of the postcard is unknown, but it's contemporaneous with the other postcards from January of 47. And we just read what that message means. And it does make sense if Virginia Hill was Lucky's gal, but shacking up with Siegel while Lucky was in prison. So who knows? There's a connection between Virginia Hill and Elizabeth Short. They were roommates or something to that effect. So there is some consistency or an in with Black Dahlia and the mob. This may help to confirm the solve and the connection of Short's and Siegel's death and how much Short really knew. Again, I researched the connection to one Onis and I didn't find anything. If anybody knows, you're welcome to let me know and I will continue that. So now that brings us to the Earl Carroll Sunset Boulevard location. He built his second famous theater at 6230 Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood, California. It opened on December 26, 1938, as he had done at the New York Theater. We're not going to have a lot of time to finish this, but I'll try to get through it. So basically, again, we have a relation between Hollywood and New York, as we did with the Copleys. Earl Carroll had an entertainment place. The glamorous Supper Club Theater offered shows on a massive stage with a 60-foot wide double revolving turntable and staircase and swings that could be lowered from the ceiling. Basically, he devoted this to the most beautiful girls in the world. Prominent exterior feature was the Wall of Fame, on which were mounted more than 100 individual concrete blocks autographed by the Hollywood celebrities, including some of the biggest stars of the 1930s and 1940s. So obviously our killer has frequented this place. They bought a postcard and they have sent it. I did notice that Jean Spangler, one of our soon-to-be victims, was also a dancer at this particular place. So there's another cross connection with the individual being at the location, purchasing a postcard, and then later Jean Spangler comes up missing. I'm absolutely floored with the Ask Newsman postcard that originated from this theater. And look who is listed as some of those showgirls: Jean Spangler, who is this killer's victim on 10/7 of 49. So actually we have a couple years before she goes missing, but it is believed that she is killed by the same person. It's if to say he would strike here at some point. Anyways, that's enough for us today, you guys. Have a great weekend. We will see you next Friday and we'll pick up where we left off.
Oh,